Hi, PSYCH. These are your Module 79 notes on attraction. Essential questions are the same. Our learning target is I can describe the variables that contribute to attraction. So first, just a question for you to get you thinking. I want you to tell me about either your best friend or about your boyfriend or girlfriend. So first, how did you first meet? Two, how did you decide to be friends or to date? And then last, what factors do you think increase the likelihood that you became friends or started dating? So, this is just to one, I'm curious, and two, um, we'll see if you find some common elements about how your relationship came together. Again, whether friendship or romantic relationship, based on what we talk about from a psychology perspective. So, looking at the first psychology of attraction. So proximity plays so much into whether we become friends with someone or not, or whether we develop romantic relationships with someone or not. So the very most powerful predictor of friendship is proximity, meaning that person happened to be in the same place, classroom, sports team, extracurricular activity, job, whatever it means, whatever that place was. So the phrase matching starts with meeting. It's hard to become friends with people if you're never around them. Okay, so proximity is huge. And a specific example of that is something called the mere exposure effect. And this is the phenomenon where repeated exposure to novel stimuli increases our liking of them. So it could be with people. Maybe at first, someone you like for a romantic relationship, maybe when you first met them, you didn't really think of them that way. But then the more time you spent with them, you're like, hey, I think I actually kind of like this person. Okay. That might be because of the mere exposure effect. It can happen with lots of things. It could be a music artist that at first you didn't really like them that much, but the more you listen to them, the more you like them. Maybe it was a TV show, a food. So it's not just with people, although in this context, we're talking a little bit more about people. So just spending time with them in a non creepy way or in a consensual way can increase your liking of them and their liking of you. So, my question for you, little application, if you're hoping for someone to start to like you, either as a friend or as a romantic partner, how might you use the mere exposure effect to make it more likely? Go ahead and write. So hopefully you said something to the effect of if I'm able to spend more time with them, the odds of them liking me and of me liking them increase as we spend more time. So modern matchmaking, although it would be great to always, just meet that person, that romantic partner by chance, um, doesn't always happen that way. And online dating is becoming more and more popular. You can see some of the sites I'm sure you've heard of here. This was from 2015. This percentage, I'm sure it's even higher now in terms of online dating. The questions, is it effective? Yeah, it is. It is. Research indicates that internet formed friendships. We formed friendships with people via online, and romantic relationships are slightly more likely to last and be more satisfying. The reason why is that when people meet online first, there are higher levels of self-disclosure, meaning people are more willing to tell each other more about themselves, which leads to more successful relationships. Next is physical attractiveness. As much as some people want to say attractiveness doesn't matter, it does. It does. Okay? Physical appearance affects first impressions more than anything else. Okay? It affects people's initial impressions of someone's personality as well. So, people who are viewed as more attractive are perceived as being healthier, as being happier, as being more successful and more socially skilled. Okay. But the thing about attractiveness is that what makes someone attractive varies from person to person. What's attractive in US culture may be different than what's attractive in other cultures or during other time periods. So, what we look for in terms of what's deemed to be most attractive shifts and from person to person. If you've ever been with friends and you pointed someone out to them that you thought was really attractive, and your friend looked at you like, seriously, like that's who you find attractive, you'll know if you've ever had that happen, like we all find different qualities, different features attractive. The thing that seems to carry from culture to time period is that more symmetrical faces tend to be seen as more attractive than not as symmetrical faces. And then finally, our feelings help to influence attractiveness. So if you view this person positively in other ways, they also likely become more attractive to you as well. You're going to get a question later. We'll see if you remember this. I'm just going to tell you because I don't know that it's clear from this slide. But if you're trying to judge like if you're on a first date with someone, what is going to increase the likelihood of a second date is how attracted the people are to each other, because the rest of the stuff hasn't had a chance to really grow yet, for lack of better words. So attractiveness, as much as we want to say it doesn't matter, it does. And finally is similarity. Okay? Friends and couples are more likely to share common attitudes, beliefs, and interests. We know that people become friends when they are of similar ages, races, religions, education, intelligence, economic status, because that's who you are more likely to spend time with. That's more likely who you are going to have proximity to. And what we find is the more alike people are, the more your liking endures. So similarity breeds content in both friendship and in romantic relationships. So you see, if you know these two teachers, if any of you had them, this is Mrs. Castro and Mrs. Anderson. So this was at New Year's 2020, before we knew 2020 was going to happen. And we were happy. But we were all teachers. We have similar interests, education levels, beliefs, attitudes, etc. So my question for you, based on what you just heard, what do you think a psychologist would say about the phrase opposites attract? So go ahead and write. For the most part, we'd say that if we were comparing, say, couples who are opposites versus those who are more similar, they would expect the ones that are more similar to have a more successful relationship. It's not to say that sometimes it doesn't happen the other way. There's no absolutes, but the research points to similarity breeds contentment. So last, we're going to talk about romantic love. This is a theory where you don't have to remember like every single little part of this, but at least be somewhat familiar. And this is Sternberg's triangular theory of love. And what I want you to see are these kind of three little points. So we have liking with intimacy, infatuation or passion down in the bottom left, empty love, commitment in the bottom right. And then we have these kind of combinations. So if people have intimacy and commitment, they have what's called companionate love. We'll need to remember that. Okay. If people have intimacy and passion, is more romantic love. If there's passion and commitment, it's fatuous love. And consummate love, this would be like if you plan on getting married or just a long-term relationship, is this consummate love where you have all three of these ideas. So intimacy is referring to like being willing to like be authentic, totally authentic with that person. Passion, I think of more like the physical infatuation piece, and then finally commitment, that I'm going to remain with this person. So we're going to talk about two main parts of this. So first is passionate love. So this is defined as an aroused state of intense positive absorption in another. It's usually more present at the beginning of a romantic relationship. People often describe like the butterflies, and they're just giddy and their heart starts racing when they see that person. Okay? And this is most explained by the two-factor theory, this idea of passionate love. We know that emotions have these two key components according to two-factor theory: physical arousal, so that heart racing, those butterflies in your stomach, plus cognitive appraisal, because we appraise those feelings as positive when tying them to our love interest. Okay? We know that arousal from any source can enhance one emotion or another depending on your own interpretation. So if you get those butterflies in your stomach when you see your love interest or your partner, that feels different than anxiety. Okay? You don't feel anxious when you see them. You attributed that to, I'm super happy to see them. I love them, whatever the case may be. And if you haven't seen these two great shows, you should watch them. The Good Place, Schitt's Creek, highly recommend. And next is companionate love. And that's the deep affectionate attachment we feel for those with whom our lives are intertwined. So generally what we see in older married couples is we see passionate love may decrease some, while companionate love increases as they get older. Okay? Passion-inducing hormones and neurotransmitters like testosterone, dopamine, and adrenaline lower some, but oxytocin remains. If we remember, oxytocin is like the hug drug, that hormone that encourages trust and calmness and bonding with your person. So what makes a long, gratifying relationship? There's three key components. One is equity, where both people receive from a relationship what they give. So it equals out there. Think of like homeostasis with equity. Next is self-disclosure, of being willing to reveal intimate aspects of yourself to that person and they to you. And finally, positive support. There was a whole study about this researcher that could pretty accurately predict whether couples would stay together or not, just based on the ratio of positive to negative interactions. And what they found is that couples that stayed together had 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction. That's Mr. Parslow and I. Again, 2020, before we knew what 2020 was going to be. So I have, I think, 3 or 4 multiple choice questions for you. So first, which of the following is an example of the mere exposure effect? Go ahead and select. The correct answer is E, that Girin didn't like sushi the first few times he tried it, but his friend encouraged him to keep eating it, and now it's one of his favorite foods. Number 2, Lisa and Nate are on their first date at a local restaurant. Which of the following is the best predictor of whether they will have a second date? Go ahead and select. The correct answer is A, how physically attractive they find each other. And finally, number 3, over time, what is true? Go ahead and choose. And the correct answer is D, passionate love decreases and companionate love increases. That is the end of our notes on attraction. You have one more to finish out the unit about altruism.